Good. So I think we can start once again. Good to have you with us. Again, if you have any questions that you want to ask, feel free to send them in the chat. We'll speak briefly. This is a short seminar, a little bit about the startup ecosystem promotion. So whoever has questions, feel free. Let me share my screen and we can get going to it. Good. So my name is Eli David, I'm the CEO of StartupBlink. We're doing a lot of work on startup ecosystem development. So that's something that we enjoy doing. And yeah, promoting of our startup ecosystem is a key element in developing an ecosystem, according to us at least. So we'll speak today a little bit about that. A little bit of an intro about StartupBlink. It's a global startup ecosystem map and research center, working in cooperation with more than 100 governments, many corporations, many multilateral agencies. The database has more than 200,000 startups. We rank the startup ecosystem of thousands of locations, and we recently ranked more than 350 corporations focusing on their startup activity. So we're doing a lot of research when we can. One of the things that we do is to help governments, municipalities, cities, countries to develop their startup ecosystem, to map, to analyze, to promote their startup ecosystem. We really believe that startups are the engine of growth and basically should be used heavily in terms of if you want to build an economy, today you have to think about startups. 100 years ago, you had to think about manufacturing. Now, startups are really the future engine. So it makes a lot of sense for governments to be extremely involved in this. And there is a reason why governments are involved in this. Many of them understand. Most of them still don't understand, unfortunately, but many of them understand. Some of the logos of those that understand here. Right? And now, a little bit about the index that we have. So basically, the index that we have is ranking the startup ecosystems of 1,300 cities and 200 and 120 countries. So it's a cool one. And if you didn't have a chance to download it, you go to StartupLink. There is on the top menu reports. You can download it. You can also download it, the corporate report. In May this year, we're going to launch in a month time. We're going to launch the new index of 2025. So really exciting time. And yeah, basically, we also do industry reports. If you go to the report section, you will see an AI report ranking all the cities and countries in terms of AI, and the same for food tech, and of course, a corporate innovation report. This is the first time ever that someone has ranked hundreds of corporates in terms of their startup activity. And yeah, it's pretty cool. So have fun. All those reports are free. Good. A little bit about why choosing the right ecosystem makes a lot of sense. Doesn't matter if you build a unicorn or you build a self-funded bootstrap startup. Most of them are born in the top cities, more or less the top 30 cities. The vast majority are born in the top 30 cities. And the reason is that those cities have the investors and they have the most bright mind of our generations. And they have the clients that can adopt startups. And they just give you a lot of support and knowledge. They're basically flywheel. Those are cities that are providing you with a flywheel to build a startup. So that's something that we always say to the startups themselves, be very careful in terms of where do you build your startup. It's one of the most important decisions that you're going to make. What are you working on? Who are you working with? And where you are. Where you are is incredibly important. Most people don't understand it. But where you are allows you to achieve success because it would constantly give you random gifts by the people that are there and the encounters that you would have and the connections that you would make and the investors that you'll get and the team members that you get, where you are matters a lot. So that's the idea. A little bit talking about startup ecosystem promotion. So first of all, the question is, who's promoting, right? Like it's a city, it's a country, who is in charge of promoting it? In this case, a little bit unfortunately, it's the government, because the government is owning the geography. And it's not necessarily good, because we already know that the most effective promoters and marketers are from the private sector. Which means that the lucky governments that get it right, that have high quality people, that have a burning desire to promote their city or country, they're going to be relatively alone. That's absolutely great news for you if you're an ecosystem developer, because most governments are super sleepy. Some of them don't even know what startups are. And most of them are sort of like not taking risks, not expanding budgets, doing everything by the book. Which cities and countries can succeed in startups? First of all, cities and countries that have great entrepreneurs. But in addition to that, also cities and countries with local and federal governments that get it and go for it and have the ability to go for it. So that's the idea. And we sometimes say that government should act as if they are startups. And if you have a good government, they would act as if they are startups. They would have KPIs, OKRs. They would market like crazy. Sometimes they would even fake it until they make it. They will sell and they will try to convert leads into sales. In this case, people moving into their ecosystem. And of course, they also try to prevent brain drain, which is the biggest tragedy of any economy, people leaving the local economy. So that's kind of like the idea. The government just has to understand that because they own the product, which is the city and the country, they have to own the marketing as well. So that's the idea. And good. So that's basically the bottom line here. Now, a little bit about the concept of, and again, if you have any questions, feel free to shoot them in the chat and get back to that. A little bit about startup ecosystem promotion. What you see here, this is exactly the role of the government, to push news, to constantly push news. What happens when they push news? First of all, people from the outside see and say, hey, I need to invest in this place. It's a cool place. It's increasing the FOMO. And the local population also say, hey, I should stay because we're in a good momentum. Maybe I don't have to go to London, you know? So that's basically the idea, just the examples on the side. And that's basically the idea. The private sector just has to get used to promoting shamelessly their cities and countries. Really, that's basically the bottom line over here. Most startup ecosystems don't have enough marketing. Like a lot of startup ecosystem developers are very busy on, let me open an accelerator, let me whatever, work on the brand, right? The brand is the city and the country. Work on the brand. That would give to absolutely everyone instead of picking favorites and giving a grant to a specific startup. So that's something that we are really trying to inject in the mindset of the government. It's not necessarily easy, but many of them get it. And when they work on the brand, magical things are happening. That's what I've seen, at least. Now, we have to be a little bit also aware that it takes time, right? It takes time to build a brand. You build it step by step. Like you're not going to be San Francisco and have a brand of San Francisco, but the idea is to keep on celebrating our wins. And again, change the story or the narrative of your ecosystem by constantly injecting whatever reasons we have to celebrate. The startup got $1 million for the first time that our city, someone managed to raise $1 million, celebrate. $10 million, celebrate. 50 million, celebrate. It's going to take time to build the unit. We need to celebrate the specific milestones, even if they're smaller. Startup got accepted into Y Combinator, celebrate. Startup closed the deal with an outside a client outside of the country, celebrate. You get the idea. So that's the beauty. And when we celebrate, basically people say, "Ooh, that's an interesting place. I should stay, or I should arrive. I should relocate to it," and so on and so on. So that's basically the idea here. Cool. The gains of a great ecosystem are immeasurable. Look at the small case study like Israel. Less than 10 million people a week ago sold their startup there in $32 billion. The taxes are $3 billion out of a random guy that started 4 years ago a startup. Understand? Boom, $3 billion that you have to spend and to cover your deficits and to build infrastructure and to defend your country. Do whatever you want with it, but just amazing gift. And whoever is giving up on those gifts is doing it wrong in a way. So that's kind of like the idea here. Now, how do you basically develop startup ecosystems? So there are a few tactical elements. I'll tell you what we do in StartupBlink because we only focus on what works. And we've done some other things as well, but we saw that the ROI is not there. One of the things that we recommend doing is to build a portal. Okay. Why? Because sometimes in our city, nobody knows what's going on. And because nobody knows what's going on, it seems very lonely. And the worst thing for you in your startup ecosystem is to give your entrepreneurs a feeling that they're alone. Because nobody wants to be alone in this crazy game. It's already extremely difficult and 90% failure. If you're doing it alone, there is no chance. So what we're doing is basically building startup ecosystem portals. We're putting a database of the startup that is interactive, keeps on updating, so people know who is doing what. Really important because, again, sometimes you're in a city, let's say you're in a small city in Italy, and you don't even know which startups are there. So we have an interactive database, so the startups and the stakeholders can connect. And then we put a lot of articles celebrating the winners. Again, remember, always celebrating. We really believe in the concept of celebration. And on top of it, we also announce when is the next event happening. What is the grant that is currently available, and so on. That's a product that we have. You can do it also on your own. It's not a big deal. It's a little bit of a big deal if you want it in a very high quality. But the idea is have sort of a hub, a central hub that unites the news, the opportunities, the celebration, brings people together, has a little bit of a database. People know who to connect with. That's something that has worked. So we continue doing that anyway. Other thing that we're doing is promotional reports. And again, everything that you see here, you can do on your own. The only issue is that, for example, on promotional report, if we do a promotional report, we can push it to 70,000 people and to 500,000 people arriving. But this is something that can be done on your own as well, although the distribution will probably be less effective. You build a beautiful report. You help basically to be in a situation that if someone arrives to your ecosystem, they receive the report, you give them something that you can give, that they can look at. When you go to a conference, you push this, and of course, distributing and creating a lead generator with a report. So the idea is that you create assets that bring you leads. You collect the leads, and you start making phone calls. Again, think like a startup. We're no longer a government. We're a startup now. We're collecting leads, we're picking up the phone, we're making sales. Sales is, hey, arrive to Cyprus. Cyprus has a great ecosystem with a great tax incentive and so on. And you pull startups from the UK or Germany or USA to Cyprus, for example. Those are the things that are done if governments are smart and they act like startups. So That's basically the idea over here. And so those things have a lot of use. And by the way, by doing this case study of writing a promotional report, you will have to speak with your entrepreneurs. One of the issues that we have with governments is that in many cases they don't even know what they've got. They don't know how many startups they have. They don't know which startups they have. So if you write a report or get someone to write a report for you, at least you know who is there. Who are the most successful one? What they think. You interact a little bit. You speak with them. So that's very very interesting in a way. So those are two experiments that are recommended to do. Again, StartupBlink, we do what works. So over the year, we just chopped whatever doesn't work, and those things that I'm showing you are the things that we validated that they work. You can either do it with us, you can do it with other companies, you can also do it alone. But the principles are valid. They make sense. So one more thing that you might want to consider doing is the participation in global indexes. Many people are making decisions on global indexes. You have the StartupLink one, GII one, you have the Startup Genome one, and so on and so on. You have the World Bank, you have quality of life index, and so on. The idea is just to be immersed in those indexes, understand why you rank the way you rank. How can you rank better? What are the parameters that are missing in your ecosystem? And then, of course, use the weapons of marketing weapons that you receive in order to promote your ecosystem. That's the idea. What you want is basically for data-driven algorithms and data providers to give you actual facts on what is great in your ecosystem so you can later market it globally. That's something that we do extensively and it works beautifully. Because when it's backed by data, you will have a lot more confidence in claiming those things. And people will believe it more because it's actually backed by data. And that's why our algorithms have about 40 different parameters. So we tell you in each one, how are you doing? And sometimes when you do really well in one, it can become a marketing weapon that you use it in your presentations and your press releases and so on and so on. So that's something that has been very helpful. And again, celebrating the top entrepreneurs. Look, in many cases, the problem in our society is problem. It's not necessarily a problem, but who are the heroes of the children? The athletes, right? Those are the models, the TikTok influencers. One of our jobs, because the startup founders are so critical to our economy and to our economic growth, is to think about how do we make our top entrepreneurs in the ecosystem the culture heroes of our country and city. One of the things that we're doing is constantly celebrating them, putting articles about them, pushing them, and so on and so on. And of course, the important thing is that we need to make sure that people are aware of our ecosystem. A lot of people now currently in the world are doing research about where should they relocate. They think about elements like what is the best startup ecosystem that I can relocate to enjoy the benefits. They will use indexes like StartupLink. They will think about where are the lowest taxes. They will check, and they will think about what is a place that gives me a visa that I can stay, and so on and so on. So all those elements, you want to be on the top. You want to try to be empathetic to the decision-making process of whoever is moving now, and try to make sure that your marketing materials are connected exactly with that. At the same time, be extra double empathetic to everyone that wants to leave the ecosystem because they think that they can't pull it off where they are now and have to move to San Francisco, London, Berlin, whatever, and try to figure out what is missing for them. And then send materials and market yourself exactly on that. So people know that there is hope and that our local economy and startup ecosystem is growing. So they don't have to leave. That's the idea. Of course, as governments, we have to show up in conferences. For example, the government of Cyprus is now going to Slush and is going to many other events. And that's very, very important. And many governments are bringing a booth, buying a booth in a conference and basically sending their entrepreneurs there. Having a marketing budget is important. You spend it on publication, indexes, whatever makes sense to get the word out, connect to whoever has distribution power, so on. We have to splurge. We have to spend money. Again, the expense is relatively low. It can be a $1 million expense. You would say, whoa, that's a lot of money. It could have gone to education, whatever. But if your startups make an exit, just like the one that Israel did two weeks ago, you get $3 billion. Like the magnitude of how much money is being generated, for example, to London with Revolut and Wise and all those great startups that they have in London or in Dubai and so on, is 100 times more than you can even spend if you try to spend. So that's why it makes a lot of sense to uh, go for it. Have a growth mentality, and marketing is part of the growth mentality. So that's the idea. So a little bit of resistance that you don't want to have one of those resistance. One is I have a good startup ecosystem. I'll let it speak for itself. No, unless you're San Francisco, everyone should market. There is so much noise. There is so much competition in the world of startup ecosystems, and it's a zero-sum game. People can only be in one place, and people can only invest in. Usually, they have only $1, and it goes either to this place or to the other place. And the person would either go to your city or they would go to another city. So again, if you're not San Francisco, you just have to do marketing. The saddest one is the second one, as far as I'm concerned, and I heard it from a few. And basically, they say, "Look, we're not ready yet. The startup ecosystem is too small. You will never grow without marketing." So if you think that you're not doing well, that's where you have to market even more to actually create the foundation of growth. But if you're shy or if you're thinking that your results are not good enough and because of that you're not marketing, the gaps will only increase. That's the idea. And governments sometimes feel uncomfortable with the fake it until you make it. It is uncomfortable. This robust approach of we're a great startup city when you know deep inside that the level of investment is low and there aren't that many events and so on, most people would avoid it. But if you keep on preaching it, and if you build the infrastructure also to accommodate it, which is not that difficult, many governments are doing weekly events and try to create conferences and so on. So you do the work and you kind of claim that you're on a great momentum, and it's fine. But it's not a mentality of being in a suit, kind of like everything is factual 100%. No, you have to think like a startup. That's what real development means in a way. Some cultures feel a little bit negative about bragging. Good. So leave all the money to the Americans. That's basically the idea. Many people will claim they're a startup nation. You want to be humble, that's great, but not in economic development and also not in business. Be humble person, but not in this. Over here, you need to market. So that's the idea. And again, there is also a problem that sometimes the local population, when they see a successful entrepreneur, they would say, no, this person is manipulated, their parents gave them a lot of money, and so on and so on. Those are the locations that are losing their startups because nobody wants to be a villain. So if I'm in an ex-Soviet country with a little bit of a communist mindset and I'm becoming a successful entrepreneur, I'm not going to stay. Everyone's going to say, hey, look at that. The guy totally doesn't deserve to be successful and so on and so on. On the first chance I have, when I do an exit, I'm off to Hawaii, to the United States. But if you're in a place that celebrates successful entrepreneurs, then those people also stay. They don't go to Hawaii, they stay. And they become the investors. They put the money of their exit in the next startups. It happened in, for example, PayPal, the PayPal mafia, because they wanted to stay in the US after they did an exit. Each and every one of them did a lot more bigger exits. Like Elon Musk was there, Peter Thiel was there. So that's the idea. Skype, for example. The guys from Skype basically built the Estonian startup ecosystem after they did the exit. Israel with ICQ back in the days. Again, those stories keep on happening. And if there is a mentality of successful people are evil, then those evil people are going to leave. Want them to stay and invest in the next generation. So that's kind of like a little bit the idea here. We talked a little bit about best practices. Again, always be marketing, always be in marketing. And I know if you're a government or public sector, it's difficult and it goes against the reflexes. And people might tell you, what are you doing? Putting us in risk and whatever. Always be marketing. Now, if you can, push more work into the private sector. Let them market. So in many cases, for example, in the USA, most of the ecosystem development is done by private sector organizations. So that's absolutely great. And of course, always gather more data, not only for strategy and improving, because let's admit it, reforms are very difficult to do. They take years. But at least have marketing weapons. Let's say if your city is number 9 in the world in robotics, source this data, promote this data, brand your city on this data. So that's sort of like the idea. And it means that, by the way, in order to do all of this, you need to map your ecosystem. Mapping your ecosystem just to map your ecosystem is not that relevant. It doesn't really help. It's just an exercise that gives you a little bit of a feeling of control. The real beauty in mapping your ecosystem is the insights or the marketing weapons that you can generate based on this mapping and benchmark. That's what we do. StartupBlink. A lot of what we do is basically getting all the data we can get our hands on and then create algorithms that gives us insights. And then whatever is positive, we share it, either with the world, with our clients. So basically feeding marketing materials constantly, and you need a partner that will keep on giving you marketing materials. You can also do it on your own if you're very creative. So that's it. And as we talked before, nothing beats success. And we need to build a brand. It will take a few years, but again, when we make it happen, the dividends are just crazy. And the countries that don't make it happen are just fragile. They rely on tourism, and then when there is a war or a pandemic or whatever we have recently, they lose everything. It just doesn't make any sense. So the idea is, again, celebrate, share, a little bit of fake it until you make it, not being shy, even as an ecosystem developer, because this is the key. And although our natural tendency is to go and maybe mentor the startups and give them a grant, no, work on the city, the branding of the city. This is where the magic is happening. We mentioned a little bit Estonia, little 2 case studies, Estonia and Israel. Estonia is, I think, the best country in promoting itself. I don't know any country that promotes itself so good in terms of startup ecosystem. It's a country of less than 2 million people, now has a brand of a digital nation. Again, what happened there? Skype was actually Swedish, but was developed in Estonia because of the low cost. Estonia basically took the credit for Skype. The people that stayed from Skype that were partly Estonians built Estonian ecosystem and a lot of marketing. Those guys are everywhere. You would see them in every conference. And they would build websites and they would do massive promotion and they would invest in this. And what happens there is that you can say that the perception of Estonia is higher than the actual results. But then again, the perception always pushes the result up. Or if the perception is low and your results are good, the results would go down. So the idea is always try to market even more than what the ecosystem is. For Estonia, it worked, and now they have a great ecosystem. That's basically the idea. The other one is Israel. Israel is considered a startup nation. Israel doesn't do that much marketing. It's pretty interesting. Like nobody there is in charge of marketing. You can do that if your entrepreneurs are so talented that you don't need to market the ecosystem. But the idea is that once you become the startup nation, everything works better because all the investors know that they have to be there. Like that's where the big exits are happening, so on and so on. So Israel is also a nice example of how a public sector can stay out of the way, but that's only if you have very, very ambitious and audacious entrepreneurs that are just going for it. And most countries don't have it because they need to develop the muscle first. The muscle in Israel was developed 30 years ago, 40 years ago with ICQ. And the muscle in most countries just started being developed, so you must promote and market. That's basically it. That was fun. That's my email. If you have any question, Eli at startupblink.com. If you're doing any promotion of your startup ecosystem or anything, send a message. I always like to learn what people are doing. And thank you so much. I'll see you in the next webinar. Have a good one. Thank you. Bye.